My name is Fraser.
My name is Mark.
And we are the hosts of the geekiest show alive. To the outside world, we're ordinary geeks.
But in the Fab International Studios, we talk comics and find other geeks just like us. This is Geek of the Week.
It's Comics Compared, where we take a look at a film, TV show, game, or some other form of media and compare it to its comics counterpart. This time around, we're looking at Netflix Umbrella Academy, so potential spoilers ahead. Of course, it was going to be Umbrella Academy. We're all on that.
We do love the Umbrella Academy.
That soundtrack and just everything about it. The Umbrella Academy is a comic book series by the saviour of the broken, the beaten, and the damned, Gerard Way, of My Chemical Romance fame, if you didn't get that reference, and Gabriel Ba, who does the he does the illustrations for it. There are currently 3 volumes out right now. The 3rd is coming towards the end. It's in like single issue forms, and there are plans for a 4th in the future. It's very exciting stuff. Now, the Netflix series is mostly based off the 1st volume, which is titled Apocalypse Suite. Pretty fitting because, you know, in the show there's an apocalypse.
Indeed.
Although there are some elements from the 2nd title, which is called Dallas. Now, let's get into this comparison. So, both start with the spontaneous and simultaneous birth of 43 babies, with the billionaire Hargreaves picking up 7 of them, getting them to use their powers to become a superhero team. In both, this sort of takes a toll on the characters, let's say mentally, and a bit physically as well for some, like number 1.
Yeah.
Both start with the team reuniting after his death, so they sort of like all come to the funeral. Now, do you want to hear some differences, Mark?
Go on then.
So, in the comics, the Umbrella Academy, their facility where they, the actual academy, is located in a mansion outside the city. Whereas, in the show, it's located in a penthouse in the city. Little slight difference there. Don't worry, the differences do get bigger.
Okay. that did feel a little bit pulling at straws.
That's a very nitpicky one. So, yeah, in the comics, a young Umbrella Academy is first shown fighting in the Eiffel Tower, where they have a secret spaceship.
Which is cool.
Which are nearly as cool as the wrestling robot machines with Alien Squad they fight against. But in the show, it's a bit more tamed, it's a bit more grounded in reality. So the young team are actually first shown fighting bank robbers, but we still get a bit of the, you know, I'm trying to think what the word is for it. A bit of the mystical, a bit of the bizarre.
It's more subtle, perhaps.
Because we get Pogo, the talking monkey,
love,
and the robot mother.
Love.
So there is still craziness there. So in the comics, Hargreaves, the father of the 7, is buried in a coffin, and Vanya, Ellen Page's character, doesn't show up at the funeral. Whereas in the show, you'll know his ashes are poured into the grounds, and Vanya is there. She's repping. She's like, "What up? I'm over here." But kind of
word up is not how one should approach a funeral.
Maybe
Fraser.
not. She's kind of getting ignored a bit, which is a bit upset. So
she still didn't say word up.
No, she didn't. You don't know. No one was listening to her.
I do. I watched the show.
Yeah, but it could have been a deleted scene. I'm joking.
Carry on.
Luther, number 1, in the comics, was given an ape body for his human head. So it's a slight difference. And he had no problems with it. He was just like, yep, this is how I am. Whereas number 1 sort of hides his, like, torso body part. But this is actually developed from a reaction to an injection that Pogo gives him to save his life. So it's in the comics it's a bit more like, oh, here's an ape's body, here's your head, pop it on.
They've darkened it a little bit. I feel.
Exactly.
They've gone more into the psychology of what it's like to have your body.
It's body dysmorphia.
Yeah, to have your body changed when you, in a way, I mean, obviously, I have tattoos, so I've changed my body quite a lot. But that was my choice, and I love my tattoos. Whereas if you, it's I suppose it's similar to maybe losing an arm or something. It really explores that in the show, and I thought that was
Luther.
I thought that was better done in the show than the comic books.
Yeah, Luther's explored way more because in like his space mission, we get told more and more that it's like there was no meaning for it.
Which is
Hargreaves
so
just sent him over. But in the book, he did in the comics, he did have a purpose for going up into space. Another difference in the comics, number 5 warns the group that the world is going to end. That the world is ending in 3 days. Nice little bit of deadline there. Whereas in the show, number 5 warns Vanya first about the world ending in 8 days, and then everyone else sort of finds out a little bit later.
Yeah.
So Diego in both sort of acts almost like a Batman sort of type character. He's sort of a vigilante, and he works with a, let's put quote unquote, Jim Gordon type character. Now, his Jim Gordon type character in the comics is called Lupo. Looks exactly like Jim Gordon, and Diego and Lupo actually have a relationship together. Now, in the show, Diego is works with a female detective called Eudora Patch. Let's just say Detective Patch because dyslexia. Who is his ex? I should have put it how I would actually pronounce it. Listening back, but who cares? Who is his ex? Unfortunately, doesn't work out too well for her. But that was a nice sort of change in the comics, I think, and also because then they went into Diego being interested in Vanya, which was again different to the comics and sort of added more depth and sort of connecting the family together because they all have their own hardships but they never sort of come together to deal with it, which is, important to do when you're going through that stuff. Now, in the comics, the Umbrella Academy fight these things called Terminauts throughout the comics, whereas their adversaries in the show, Hazel and Cha-Cha, who have a bigger presence in the show. They are in the comics, but they wear the masks a lot more, and they're a lot crazier. They're very much more sugar-obsessed, whereas in this, it's just a cute little, relationship developing between the donuts cashier and
yeah, I know you like that kind of thing.
That was cute.
It was cute.
Now, in the comics, Vanya is manipulated by a character called the Conductor, who wears his masks and looks like, stereotypical villain. But in the show, they sort of did it a bit more subtle. There was Leonard Peabody, who takes the place of the Conductor, and he just looks like your ordinary guy. And at first, I saw this guy as a love interest. I was like, oh, finally someone's there for Vanya. And then I was like, oh, this dude's using her.
So good. Oh, so well done.
And now we're going to talk about number 5 for a bit. We're going to talk about number 5. So it's never fully explained how number 5 died. In the comics, it's never fully explained who tried to kill number 5. Number 5 explains in the show that an organisation watches over this time continuum and is trying to kill him. So, in the comics, it's just this person's after number 5. It's okay. Now, the organisation does appear in the comics, but it's called something different. It's called Temps
Arternails-ish.
Which is a bit... which Netflix decided to help dyslexics like myself out, and probably the people on the show reading it, and they titled the organisation The Commission. A little bit easier.
Yeah.
Now,
more TV friendly, I think.
Exactly, yeah. Less the comics are very with the differences. Comics have just gone for a wacky,
and small differences like that. You wouldn't really notice unless you're a massive nerd like you and me.
Exactly, which is why we do this shit.
Yeah, exactly.
So in the comics, number 5 solves the equation to travel back in time with the help of Dolores. And in the TV show, he solves it all by himself. He's a big, smart boy. Actually, no, he's sort of kind of a man.
A bit like you.
Yeah.
You're 22, but you look about 12.
Cheers, mate.
Anytime.
And in the Dallas run, he actually... it's a very interesting twist. So in the TV show, it's implied he assassinates JFK, but in the Dallas run, he goes rogue and tries to save JFK. So it's a nice little nod, sort of change up they've done there. But again, for the TV show, it should have highlighted what the organisation had over him. Now let's go back to Vanya. Vanya's powers come out and she becomes the white violin via machine the Conductor made in the comics, whereas her powers come from Harold Jenkins, who hires a guy to beat him up in front of her. So that's when her sort of powers start to manifest, and then she actually becomes the white violin after being imprisoned in a soundproof chamber by her own family, which is, aren't families great?
Oh yeah.
And we're going to talk about Vanya's first evil acts because they're slightly different. So in the comics, her first evil act is killing the Conductor. She does kill the Conductor equivalent in the TV show, but unfortunately, her first evil act as the white violin in the TV show is killing Pogo.
Oh,
which I was 100% devastated about.
Why did you remind me of that?
I know. And in the comics, Pogo dies by getting his brains blown out by the white violin. which is very graphic and even sadder. Still sad. Pogo dies in the show by being impaled by the telekinesis powers, the white violin. Still sad, but just not as graphic as that. Just reading that comic, I was like, oh my goodness, I didn't need to see that. Number 5 puts a stop to Vanya in the comics by just shooting her in the head. Allison, number 4, sort of does a bit nicer, takes a nicer approach and just puts a stop to her by shooting a gun right next to her ear in order to like deafen her. That works. Speaking of Allison, her powers in the comics are way stronger. Like her rumor powers, she actually has the power to bend reality whenever she says like, I heard a rumor. Whereas the show sort of limits it to just being able to control each of other people's emotions and the actions of others. Very similar to like Purple Man in Jessica Jones, but you know, she uses it for a bit better things. Again, talking about differences of powers, Klaus has telekinetic powers in the comics, but only when he's barefoot. But in the show, they've limited him to just being able to communicate with the dead, which adds an interesting character development when he does like sort of talk to the dead. And we'll go into that a bit more actually, because in Volume 2, in the comics, Klaus, Luthor, Diego use a dead time traveler to go back in time and try and help Five and Allison, but they miss the mark and end up in Vietnam. Klaus opens a bar and has a kid. But in the comics, again, to go back to sort of that, the more darker route they've gone for, Klaus steals Hazel and Cha-Cha's suitcase and goes back in time, again, in the middle of the Vietnam War. But he fights for a year, falls in love with Dave. It's a cute little relationship going there.
It is adorable.
But unfortunately, his death causes Klaus a great bit of grief, and he suffers from PTSD, which is a new addition for the show and was very well done, I feel like we were talking about with his powers communicating with the dead. That was brilliant. Last bit of comparison, number 6, Ben, is a mystery. We don't actually know how he dies. The show delves more into Ben than the comics do. Both sort of still have that mystery about him, but thanks to Klaus's powers on the show, we're able to see Ben on a regular basis. And he sort of acts as like Klaus's conscience, which is a nice sort of like development there. Like, again, it's bringing the 7 of them together instead of 7 individual characters, I feel. And Ben is actually able to use his powers through Klaus in an epic scene in the final episode, which was really cool. Now, I've mentioned a lot of differences and similarities here, and I've also mentioned a lot of different comics in this comparison, all of which I, and I'm sure Mark as well, will recommend, especially if you enjoyed the show.
Definitely.
As always with adaptations, there's going to be similarities, differences, and comparisons.
Thanks for listening to Geek of the Week. Be sure to tune in next week. Same geek time, same geek channel.
And if you want to follow us on social media, it's at GOTW Radio on Twitter. Search for Geek of the Week Radio Show on Facebook. And to listen again, it's www.mixcloud.com/Geek of the Week Radio Show.